Hey y'all, I am Kendra Tillman. 11 years ago, because of my past experiences as a woman of faith, trying to lean into my career, I looked for a professional growth experience that would encourage me to embrace who I am spiritually while growing as a leader. When I couldn't find that, I launched a faith based women's empowerment event that I hosted for 5 years. Our last event was in March of 2019. In the last 5 years, I became a certified life and leadership coach, and my business evolved from the You Are Stronger Than You Think women's event into a spiritual and professional growth conference for Christian women into what is now Strong Her Me Coaching and Consulting, where we help rising women leaders realize their mission through coaching, curriculum, and community. My word for 2024 is thrive. So, in honor of International Women's Month, StrongHer.me is releasing a weekly conversation that explores the realities of what it means to thrive as a woman in leadership. The series is titled Secrets of Thriving Women Leaders. I originally planned to call this series Habits of Thriving Women Leaders, but decided to shift into talking about the secrets of thriving women leaders because I want us to uncover some of the hidden gems that only come when you sit down and talk with another woman about the joys and challenges of leading while keeping her soul well. So, my first guest for today's conversation is Ericka Young. Ericka is my bestie and one of the most brilliant, disciplined, fun loving, and down to earth women that I know. In addition to being an amazing wife and mom during her 19 years in business, and I'm gonna have to double check with her if that's the right number, but I think it is. Ericka has served over 500 families as a certified financial coach. Her specialty is helping people crush debt so that they can design a vibrant and intentional life. She believes that personal finance goes beyond the numbers and has developed creative ways to break down the mental and experience based barriers to financial success. She's the author of Naked and Unashamed 10 Money Conversations Every Couple Must Have. And she has developed a financial wellness program for companies and organizations to reduce employee stress and improve the overall bottom line. You can learn more about Ericka and her company and about adding them maybe even to your payroll at erickayoung.com. And you can thank me later. All right, Ericka, thank you for being my first guest for this conversation series.
Yes, thank you so much for having me. And after that introduction, man, look, listen, I need to take you on the road so you can intro me for all the things. I love it. That's a pump up spirit right there.
Yes, and everything I said was absolutely true. And, when I was thinking about this series, I wanted to talk to you specifically because I know over the years, you and I, we have had so many conversations about money and how money impacts the way that we move through the world. It's how much it's impacted both of our lives and, our experiences with money and the many years that you have spent supporting other women and families with money, like them really finding the courage to actually face the things that they have dealt with money. So that's why I thought it would be so great for us to have you as the first person to be a part of a conversation like this. And so, in your experience, when you think about, let's just think about specifically about leadership and how do you think of leadership and how do you think that leadership looks different for men than it does for women, and or vice versa? How do you think it looks different for women versus how it looks for men?
First of all, I think we're all leaders. It's just
Mhm.
what are we leading in, right? And are
Mhm.
we aware of our leadership abilities and skills and what we can bring to the table? So I feel like my kids have led me as they've grown up. Like they've taught me how to be the parent of this age child. And they
Mhm.
didn't realize they were leading that effort. And I had to follow some of their leads, right? Because
Mhm.
they are experts in their generation. I am not, right? Um,
Yes.
in the workplace, I had to understand that though I worked for someone, I
Mhm.
was a leader because I was able to make influence. I was making an impact. And without me, certain critical functions wouldn't exist. So I had to understand that leadership is not just hierarchy, because I think that is a viewpoint that I think men probably share more often than women, that it
Mm.
is a hierarchy versus it being the impact made. And I also think that women need to step into their leadership roles more intentionally and seek out where they really are best as a leader so that they can
Mhm.
lean into that a little bit more. But I do think that the difference is that men tend to see it as a title, a role, a hierarchy, and they see dollars attached with leadership. And women don't tend to see it that way, and we run a whole bunch of stuff. If we're talking about who runs what,
Mhm. Mhm.
women run multiple things at one time. And so we just don't call it leadership. We lead
Mm.
our children, we can lead in our careers and in our business, and and as a matter of fact, we're very influential in our relationships with our spouses. And so I think that it is a perspective shift, because I think everybody's a leader. It's just, what are you leading in? And if you can identify that for yourself, then I think we can be even more effective, because you can double down on what you're really good at.
Mm. When you think about the women that you've observed, like, and as I'm listening to you talk about the difference between how men and women lead, when it comes to money, do you see a difference in how women approach money versus how men approach money?
Yes. um First of all, women tend to be more emotional about it and
Mm.
sit in their security glands, right? So where they feel insecure,
Mhm.
they don't think that they're capable, or they don't lean into it. They're not asking enough questions, or just really seeking inquiry. And then when we do feel confident, that's awesome, but we, tend to mostly take a back seat. And I think that's a miss. I think that it's a misconception, one, that we need to be taking a back seat. But I also think that women are really great money managers if we actually figure that out, like what we're good at. Like
Mhm.
I think we make assumptions about, we're not great at numbers, or so and so brings home the bacon, or is the breadwinner, and so therefore we assign meaning to that, when it really doesn't mean that you can't be great at money.
Yeah.
It's just about figuring out what it is that you're good at, what you can bring to the table, where your strengths lie, and how we can do this if you're in a coupled up relationship, how you can do that as a team. So, yeah, I think we're just more emotional about it, and men are
Mhm.
very straight to the point and blunt, and it's not right or wrong. It's just different. And
Yeah.
I think that, a lot of times men feel they have done their part by bringing home money, be it a lot of money or some money. They feel like that is the part that they need to do. And women need way more than just the dollars in. We need the security gland fulfilled. And for some, that's more, a certain amount of savings, or having no debt, or being knowing that they can take care of their kids, or send them to camps, and whatever it is. But there are things that allow a woman to exhale, and that's what I mean by her security gland being fulfilled. And I
Mm.
just think that we are not focusing on the right things when we're trying to have some of these money conversations. I think we're misaligned in how we begin it, and we're not intentional about what the most important things are. So, yeah, it's different for both men and women. And I think if we can have a conversation about what pushes your buttons, what makes you feel secure, when do you get a chance
Mhm.
to exhale and breathe, what gets your heart rate moving up, what makes you concerned or fearful. If you have that with your partner, or if you can have some of those dialogues with your kids to help them understand, or sometimes you need to kind of work through this with yourself to understand what's really pushing the buttons and what your triggers are, then you can be in a position to really do a good job with how you move forward with money.
Oh, so good. And I know that, we're talking in generalities, right? Because we have to, because we don't know every man, we don't know every woman, but just in general, from your observation of the hundreds of,
Mhm.
families you work with, which means the thousands of people that you've worked with, and there's just some patterns that you've been able to see in the process. And it actually made me curious about, like, for you, because you are the money expert in your household. Do you agree with that? Because of your work, would you consider yourself the money expert in your household?
Yes, but I would also say my husband says that we share chief
Mhm.
financial officer in the house, and I say nothing about that. I tend to disagree because he's a very smart dude, right?
Yes, yes.
But yes, there my role is predominantly the routine money management, making sure that all the things are taken
Mhm,
care of. And his role is some of the extras, like he just priced out our insurance. And I didn't even deal with any of that. Right. And so, of
mhm,
course, it's a
mhm,
money thing, but I'll just pay the bill. Right. Like we talked about our coverage, but I didn't do any of
mhm.
that research. He did all that. So that's why
Yeah.
essentially he says that we share the role is because I have certain tasks and he has certain tasks and together, that works for us.
And the reason why I'm bringing that up, because I want to ask you specifically for you, when you think about what you described, when you talked about the difference between men and women, even though you are the one that, like, this is so much a part of just who you are, how you move through the world. You're constantly, like, I know from conversations we've had, you're always weighing pros and cons when it comes to money. You're thinking about, okay, what's the return on the investment of this? Like, it's just so much of how you walk through the world. Would you still say that you would describe yourself in those same ways? Like, do you still see those things in you, like the emotional aspects of even bringing that into not just your personal finances, or should I say, actually, yeah, in your personal finances? I know you know all the dollars and cents, and you know all the things that you would tell your clients, right? But when it comes to your own household, right, do you find that you still have those same things that you're dealing with as well as a woman?
Absolutely. I am my own best test case.
Yes. Yeah. Yeah.
Yes, I have insecurities,
Mhm.
when payments within my business are running slow,
Mhm.
right?
Mhm.
And it's taking a
Mhm.
long time for something to happen, or when a contract isn't being signed, like right now, I'm waiting
Yes.
on a couple of contracts to get signed so that I can get paid, right?
Mhm.
Um, and yes, I my security gland for me is in 2 things. Like I wanna be secure in my future and I wanna also know
Yes.
that there's cash flow. Um,
Mhm.
and that is important to me. And so absolutely I see those emotions running. I also do not enjoy like spending large amounts of money. So I will get afraid. I'm like, wait a minute, this is too much. I don't want to do this. And I have to do some self-reflection and, make sure that I'm making a good choice and decision. Whereas my husband has always been from day one a bit freer. We've been together for 25 years. And back in
Mhm.
the day, if he were willing to spend a certain amount on a pair of shoes, I was like, I'm not doing that. And now it's like, it's not shoes, it's something else, right? Like,
Yeah,
and
yeah.
so, but his ability to spend without emotion, his
Mhm.
capacity is bigger than mine. And,
Mm.
and so I feel like there's constantly work to do, but there's also my rational mind has to process in order to get to the place where I'm ready to spend money. Big money, I
Mm.
should say.
So you say his capacity for spending money is greater than yours.
Yes.
So
Mhm.
how do you decide, or how do you know what your capacity for spending is?
Honestly, Sometimes it's just on specific items, right? Like,
Mhm.
on any article of
Mm.
clothing, I've probably not spent more than $120, or I you
Mhm.
know, I let him spend. I said yes to some Jordans,
Yes.
okay?
Yeah.
Which, that's not cheap, and, that is something I probably wouldn't do for myself, but I'm
Mhm.
like, "All right." I'm sure he's good with it because he has a few pairs, right? So, but when we're talking about vacations or spending on our house remodel, I need data. I need to process more. I'm
Mhm.
much slower to come to the conclusion on should we spend, whereas for him, he's able to go through that process really quickly, or he skips a couple steps and he's like, "I just wanna do this or I don't." And for me,
Mhm.
I need more, which takes more time, and I also need to ensure that I have the best price, and I also, I have to go through some of these things to convince myself it's a good purchase or find something less expensive. Um, so it depends on what the item is to determine, like, the
Yes.
capacity, but I also think that it is all it it's it's a process that I have to go through in order to release the dollars, because that's one thing that he and I will never do, is spend when the other person isn't ready to do it.
Mhm.
We're not
Mhm.
gonna make independent decisions even if it's on a $150 pair of Jordans, right? Like, we're gonna talk through stuff. His most recent purchase was a suit, and he wanted me to
Mhm.
come with him. I could have very easily not done that. Like, I don't enjoy shopping with him all the time because, he always has something with something else to be, doing it. And sometimes I just want to do that by myself, but he wanted me with him for that purchase. And that's, a suit is not cheap. And so I went with him and we made that decision together. And so um I just think that, you know, the for me, uh, the the processing that I have to do takes longer.
Yeah. So that process for you requires some extra time on your behalf, right?
Yeah. Mhm.
And when I was listening to as I was listening to you share about that and the how the difference in capacity, one of the reasons why I thought about you as I was thinking about, okay, who do I want to talk to where this series is concerned, is I wanted to talk to someone who could really talk to us about how you make money decisions from a place of wisdom and grace rather than fear. Because I think that there is so much fear that people have around money because money is connected to so many areas of your life, right? And I think a lot of times there's a lot of weight on money because it has to do with what makes you feel safe, like you said, the word you used earlier, secure. And so many times I know for myself, I'm just going to speak for myself, there are decisions that I've made because of fear rather than from a place of slowing down and, okay, what does wisdom have to say about this? What would grace tell me to do in this situation? So, can you think of something recently, maybe in the last year or so, a personal experience that you've had where you had to make a significant money decision and how you approach that from wisdom and grace rather than from fear?
Yes. So this last year has been quite expensive in our household. There
Ah,
I promise there's not been a single other 12-month period where we have spent
mm,
more money. And so
wow.
it's interesting that you asked that question. And it's not, so let's be clear. 20 years ago, we couldn't have afforded to do all the things we're doing today. So
Right,
capacity, like,
right.
our ability to do it is there. And
Mhm.
that's really not the best reason to do a thing just because you have the money. That doesn't
Mhm.
Just because you have more money doesn't mean the answer is always gonna now be yes. That's not it.
Mm.
Um, so we just celebrated our 25-year anniversary, so we had gifts that we were trying to get one another, significant gifts. We had a trip, a significant trip that we wanted to take.
Mhm.
Um,
Mhm.
we my husband turned 50, so we had a significant party that I threw for him.
Mhm.
Um, I mean, the list keeps going. We renovated our kitchen. I mean, I promise I cannot, now that I'm adding it all up, I'm like, this was a lot more money.
I'm
But
sorry, I didn't
anyway,
mean to make you add it all up in your head.
not to mention this year we're gonna take the biggest trip of our life, honestly. So
Yes,
I
yes.
think that for trying to, one, let's be clear, before last year started, we knew last year was going to be expensive. And we discussed the
Mhm.
fact that there would be other things that wouldn't happen. We knew our top priorities. So I think the things that help people to get into alignment about spending money are, what do you value? So that's about what's
Mhm.
important to you. And then what are your priorities? Because I can value travel. It's fun, it's
Mhm.
enjoyable,
Mhm. Mhm.
but if it isn't the top priority,
Mhm.
then we're going to put it on the back burner. So last
Mhm.
year, travel for our anniversary was a priority, and it also
Mhm.
was, I mean, it's obviously one of our values. We enjoy traveling. We'll spend money there. But this year, and in addition to that, our other priority last year was our renovation on our kitchen. And so we were like, okay, so these are the things that we know that we're going to spend money on. And so other things aren't as important, and they don't rise to the top. We weren't spending a lot of money on other stuff because we wanted to ensure that our home ended up the way we wanted it to be, on budget, on time.
Mhm.
And we wanted to ensure that we had our trip, and we did not want anything to get in the way of that. And so this year, though we value travel, and we wanted, now it wasn't necessarily a part of our values, to just have a beautiful house. That's not, we don't necessarily care as much about that. So that's not a value. We value travel, though. We value the experiences.
Mhm.
Um but one of our priorities, we thought, was we were going to renovate our house, and we're like, I mean, we were going to do something else, the bathrooms this time, and we're like, you know what? This trip is a higher priority than
Mhm.
doing the bathrooms. And so that is now on the back burner. And so we decided not to do something that we thought was going to be a priority. We took it off our priority list. And so I think people don't sit and think about what they value. And I suggest you only have like three top priorities, because if it's 10 of them, then nothing's a priority. It's just a
Mhm.
bunch of stuff you want to do.
Yes.
But if you if you prioritize and say, if I do nothing else, this has to happen. And then if nothing else besides these two things happen, I'm good. Right? Like, I
Mhm.
think people need to think that through. And then, of course, you really need to make sure that it's in alignment with what it is you want. And so, um, I think people don't slow down enough to do that. I think we're so in the moment. We're so hand to mouth with our money that we don't slow down enough to go through, like, what I would consider a decision matrix, right? And I think the other thing is to look back and say, all right, so if I don't do this, will I have regrets? I like to ask that of my clients. I ask that of
Mhm.
myself or my husband. Like, okay, if we said no, is it going to make a difference? Are we going to care? And that's how we took off, or lower the priority for renovating the bathrooms, because we were like, that doesn't matter compared to the other thing that we want.
Yeah, so what do you value and what are your priorities? And hearing you say decision matrix, actually, like one of my takeaways from as you were talking was, what does our decision making process look like? Because that decision making process really can either create anxiety and angst and worry and fear about the future, or it can put you in, like, it can shift your perspective of seeing things from a different lens or thinking about them in a different way. And when you think about the women that you have worked with over the years and you watch them go through that decision making process, is there anything that comes to mind where you have noticed what it actually takes for a person to shift from fear to faith, or from holding on so tight to feeling like, you know what, I live in a place of abundance. I'm not worried that everything is going to be taken away from me. Is there anything that you've noticed where that shift tends to happen? Is it just life and time, or yeah, I'm just curious what you think about that.
Well, I think that fear, I've been taught from a
Mhm.
few different places, fear is false evidence appearing real.
Mhm.
And if we can drill down to what the false evidence is
Yeah.
and identify it,
Mhm.
then we can
Mm.
realize this isn't based in reality, right? So,
Mhm.
for instance, a lot of times people think they're never going to retire, and their evidence
Mm.
is that the evidence that they see is that they don't have enough in savings today to ever retire, and they've got 20 years from now, right? So when we look at what they have and their timeline and their ability or capacity to save for 20 years, I can show
Mhm.
them that the evidence that they thought was real is actually false.
Mm.
Right? So for me, sometimes it's just doing some calculations, right? And
Yes.
that's
Yes.
because
You're no, you run some numbers.
that's right. I'm a numbers person. So let me get and so I like to inject hope by doing some calculations that people haven't done.
Mhm.
So I
Mhm.
want to minimize, reduce, or eliminate the false
Mhm.
evidence and find something that's real. And if I can show someone that $200 a month for 20 years is going to get them to a place that is meaningful and
Mhm.
gives them hope that they
Mhm.
can retire, fantastic. It's a calculation. And for someone who quote unquote said that they were afraid of numbers, I can
Mhm.
do the numbers and then I'm injecting the hope. And all they have to do is feel and receive that, they have to believe they can, but typically for 200 bucks or whatever, like this is something they can do, right? Um, but it is false evidence. And so I would like to, in conversations, even with my husband or with my kids, I want to drill down to what's real and what isn't. And
Yes.
then
Yes.
we can get to a place of them understanding
Mhm.
that the possibilities are endless, that abundance is available to them versus the fear and the worry and the stress and concern, because it's honestly easier to be scared. I mean, the media wants us to
Mm.
continue to be scared.
Mhm.
It is a comfortable place to be because you aren't by yourself in that. It takes courage to believe that you're gonna have a brighter future than you have today. That takes courage because it's
Yes.
outside the box and it's not what everybody is doing.
Mm. So true. So true. Is I would say we do live in a time where there is a lot of the insecurity that people feel actually comes from what other people are saying rather
Mhm.
than them taking the time to actually look at the situation themselves. And I remember years ago when you all first learned about Dave Ramsey and you told us about, him, and that kind of started you on your journey to paying off debt, and just how watching how that has evolved. I do remember one of the first things was sitting down and actually looking at where are we right now, right?
Mhm.
Because there's sometimes we think we know where we are, but again, we don't have any real evidence that this is actually where we're starting from, right? And so it was actually a relief to look at everything, take a look at what the
Mhm.
income is, even if here's what's interesting, even if the expenses were outpacing the income,
Yeah.
at least now you know Oh, well, that's the reason why this always feels short because I don't have enough. And now, okay, what could I do about it? What could I do to shift this or change this? What needs to be different? There's just something about facing the thing that makes you afraid that I
Yeah.
think is very empowering versus letting it chase you, right? Like it's chasing you around.
Yeah. Well, and
Yeah.
honestly, if you don't look at it, then you don't know
Hmm.
what to do.
Yeah.
You can if staying in the dark is not a place of power, right?
Yes. Yes.
So when you look at something, you face that fear, you face that and I suggest for a lot of people, if you're having to do things like that, make it easy on yourself. Don't do it alone. So maybe you need to
Mhm.
have somebody with you, and for me, that has
Mhm.
always been, I was the coach helping people see their numbers. Um,
Mhm.
but don't feel like you have to do this by like, for instance, looking at your FICO score or your credit report. Um, I think a lot of people have a lot of challenge with sharing that type of information. But if you feel like you need somebody, you know, they don't have to look at it. They just need to be with you, right?
Mhm.
Um,
Mhm.
I also say get you some chocolate, have a glass of wine, put some music on. I mean, sometimes calculating numbers, we need to let the medicine go down a little easier,
Mhm.
and I think people and then I also think sometimes looking at numbers maybe isn't the first thing. That is the
Yes.
thing that I have learned in the last 10 years of doing this work is that
Mhm.
sometimes people aren't ready to do the numbers yet. And we
Yeah.
need to figure out what's in the way. Um,
Mm.
and so I want to understand people's habits and their behaviors and their past childhood experiences with money. What was the first things they did as an adult with their dollars? What are some of the money mistakes they made, or some of the accomplishments that they're proud of? Maybe those are the conversations you have before you jump into the actual dollars and cents that are bringing up some anxiety. I think that it's okay to do it a different way. We don't there sometimes the process and the journey is different for everybody, and that's okay.
Mhm. Mhm. I like what you said about what's in the way.
Yeah. Mhm.
Yeah. What's in the way because and maybe you aren't ready for that step just yet. You need to
Yeah.
actually look at what's in the way before
Mhm.
you start crunching numbers. And so I think that's so wise for you to share. And I'm thinking again back to the title of this series about secrets of thriving women leaders. What would you say is a secret that you don't necessarily maybe hear discussed very often, or just something maybe that you've even realized for yourself in the last few years about how you got to this point where you feel that you are actually thriving as a woman, as a leader? Yeah.
A secret? Oh, okay.
Give us a
I would
secret, Erica. Give us
I
a secret.
know, I know. Well, the one thing that I will say is that there I wanna say a few things. First of all,
Okay.
what I say is that one way that men are advancing in their careers, making more money, etcetera, is they talk about what they earn. They talk about literally how many dollars they have made. And it's uncomfortable. That's an uncomfortable thing for women to do. But I feel like
Mhm.
if you don't talk about it, then you could be missing out on dollars, leaving money on the table. Case in point, I went to a women in business conference with my daughter at her college, her university. And one of the main things that one of the speakers said was that women out the gate from the beginning of their careers, they make $7,000 less on average than their male counterparts. And
Mm.
so what she said was negotiate immediately. Get used to
Mhm.
negotiating. Do it on your very first job out of college and ask for at minimum $7,000 more. And I thought, that's brilliant. That's
I
awesome.
love it. I
Um,
love it.
So there is that. As a business owner, that also means ask for more, right? And I war with myself on this all the time. Just last week I pitched, well, a couple weeks ago, I sent an agreement with some dollars on it that I should have raised. I felt good about the number, but I should have pushed myself because
Mhm.
when they saw it, there was no negotiation. They were like, "Okay, so let me be clear, this is the amount." And I'm like, "Sure, yes." And then there was no they should have I needed them to come back and say, "But hold on a second, that's a little steep."
Yeah.
You're pushing an envelope when they say, you're kind of hitting our budget, like, wait a minute. And then even if I didn't get my top number, I might have earned more, right? So I'm constantly in the process. Now, I will say the number was higher than where I had started. So that's awesome. But it wasn't as
Mhm.
high as I think would have, and then when I realized who's speaking at this event, I was like, I know they paying her more because I that's a household
Yeah.
name. She's a household name.
Yes.
So
Yes.
anyway, the point I'm making is a secret. There's two. One is negotiate and don't be
Mhm.
afraid to do so. And the other one is talk about what you earn, of course, in safe spaces, because that's what men are doing. Um, and I will also say, don't confuse your value with where you are financially.
Mm.
I think a lot of women
Mm.
tend to mix up who they are with where they are with their money, and they are not equivalent. So the secret is to know your value independent of your financial place in life, because you bring something to the world that is extremely valuable. I don't want people to mistake that for it's not important, because it is, but it
Mhm.
isn't. Your value is not dependent on what is in your bank account. Period.
Mm. So good. See, I asked you for the secret, and I, I mean, thinking of when you were talking about us talking, like getting used to negotiating. That's been such a big growth opportunity for me in recognizing that people actually expect you to negotiate. So if
Yes.
you don't negotiate, it's like you missed out because people were expecting that this is going to be like a give and take, right? How can we make this a win-win for both of us?
It would be poor business for
Mhm.
every offer made to a new hire or any hire. It's poor business for them to give an offer at the top of what they can do. That's poor
Yeah.
business. So if you think
Mm.
about it from the business perspective, it makes no sense
Mhm.
to do it that way. So there's always wiggle room to negotiate. So the very first offer that they give you is never at the top. You should always assume that they have room for you.
Mm.
And
Mm.
and same goes for business owners. When we are putting our money out there and saying this is what this work to me is valued at, because I'm doing the work, I
Mhm.
know what I have to do, I
Mhm.
know who I have to work with in order to get it done. They can always find more budget. Even if for this project they have a budget, this company, you should be working with companies of size enough that when you're coming into them, they have room. They can go to human resources, they can go to the employee resource groups, they can go to all of these different places to pull dollars. And so there's always more. So for case in point, my target audience is not a company necessarily of 10 people. I need a company of size, ideally 500 to 1,000 employees, because I know that they have access to more dollars in different places.
Mhm.
I know they do.
Mhm. Mhm.
So if you don't have the budget, let's figure out who in your organization does have the budget, and how can we get
Mhm.
them get some of those dollars, right? So I just, we limit ourselves unnecessarily, and it causes us to shrink, and we're losing money. And so then we say, oh my gosh, I can't get this money thing figured out. Well, I think that there are ways to increase our income. Let's go figure that out.
Mm. Mm, mm, mm. I'm like, I'm like trying to remember I'm interviewing you. There's so much that you just unpack seriously that I really think that we just need to reflect on it. That we limit ourselves unnecessarily. Like, who asked you to lower that? Like,
Mm,
you decided in your own head that you couldn't ask for that. And I just love what just the thought of what would happen if we assume that there's always room for more.
mhm,
Mm, 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 mm.
mhm. Yeah, because we're worth it. What we do is worth it. What we do is worth it. Period.
Yes, yes. What we do is worth it. Period. That's
Yes.
why that's me as a Gen Xer trying to be like a trying to be a millennial, not even a millennial.
No, I
What's
know.
that
What, Gen
beginning?
Z?
Gen Z.
Yes.
Oh,
Yes. That part.
so I
That
want to
part.
go back to the secret that you said, know your value independent of your financial place in life, and we'll wrap it up with this. So knowing your value independent of your financial place in life. So when you say that, what do you tell me more about what you mean by that?
Your gifts, skills, talents, ability, what you bring to the table is
Mhm.
valuable. Who you are as a human, how God
Mhm.
created you uniquely and wonderfully, no one can do you. No
Mhm.
one. I mean, you are a unique human that is amazing. And so I think that a lot of times we are not certain of who we are. And so we think that begin to connect that to other things. And it's completely independent of how much money is in your bank account, what you have saved for retirement, how much you're making on an annual or monthly basis. You bring value, and you are special. And sometimes we have to remind ourselves, and sometimes we have to remind other people as well. I'm smart, I'm wise, my opinion matters, what I say is important, and
Mhm.
without me, some of this stuff wouldn't function, right?
Yes.
And that is important to know. And so sometimes I just tell people to take an inventory of the value you bring to the world, who you are, that's special, unique. Um, because if we can do that, then we know how to communicate it in our business, in our work, in our relationships. We won't take any mess. And so that's the important part of this. So we're valuable, period. Hands down. Let's go.
Yes. The confidence that you are able to speak with about money and the importance of knowing your value, is that something that you feel that you've developed in over the last few years? Has it been a long process for you? How would you describe what that process for you was like to be more confident?
I turned 40.
That helped.
Something about 40, man, um, and raising interesting children who challenge
Yes.
me on a routine basis. Being a business owner for a very long time and weathering lots of ups and downs and realizing that I'm resilient, and um,
Mm, mm.
having faith in my creator and also in who he created. Like, he's amazing and he created.
Mhm,
And
mhm.
so we tend to forget that he created us,
Yes.
and he did it exactly how he wanted it to be.
Mhm.
And so if that's true, then it's also true that um I can have confidence that I have everything I need to be exactly who he needs me to be. I don't so
Yes.
does that mean it's a perfect straight line? Nope. Does it mean that I
Mhm.
trip and stumble over myself sometimes? Absolutely, because I'm human.
Mhm.
Does it mean there are things that I wish were different or I mean, everybody has regrets, sure, but I don't allow that to define what I'm capable of next. I'm always like, "Wow, I'm surprised I'm thinking about doing this next thing. This is wild, but here I am." And
Mhm.
because
Mhm.
he made me, I know I can. I can't put constraints on it. I can't act like I have it all figured out because I don't. I just take steps 1 and 2, and I'm sure then he'll show me steps 3 and 4, but that's faith, right?
Yes.
So, um, I just know that I also want for my daughters to feel that not just that anything is possible, they can do anything, but because of the unique way you are made, no one is like you. And what your need the world needs what you have to offer in the way only you can offer it. And that's
Mhm.
I believe that for myself and I really want my kids to believe that and anybody else that I get a chance to touch.
March is International Women's Month. What do you cherish most about this season of your womanhood journey?
Wow. Honestly, I'm pretty cool with who I am. Like, I'm not spending a lot of time in places where I think that I used to spend time in, where, with people that didn't fill me up or add value or on activities that were not productive or that were draining. I love the fact that I'm surrounded by powerful women who help me to be a better human. And I am very appreciative of the women in my family who are amazing and who just even in the small things that they have done to make an impact on my life that, I feel like I'm fully expressed today. I feel like I am there's no arrival. I've not arrived, but I absolutely feel like I am in a best version of myself because of all of these people that I've decided to surround myself with and those that I have also decided not to surround myself with. It is all a part of the journey. And I honestly can say that I love who I am. She's not perfect, but she's here. So uh I'm happy about that.
All right now.
Hey.
Love it, love it, love it. So thank you so much for being my guest for this series. I mean, I knew that it was gonna be very meaningful and powerful for the women that were gonna listen and hear what you had to say. And I just think that it's very inspiring. Also, because I feel like you're in a lane where money is concerned. That is a lane where I don't often see a lot of women like dipping their toe into being leaders in that space.
Yeah.
And so I'm so proud of you. I'm so excited for other women that are going to be blessed by your words of wisdom that you share with us, with the secrets that you share with us today. And
Thank
then
you.
how can the women that are going to watch and listen, how do they connect with you once this is all, once they turn this interview off and they want to go talk to Ericka Young?
Yes, you can find me on erickayoung.com on my website and Ericka Young Official on LinkedIn, Facebook, and Instagram.
All right, erickayoung.com. I'm just sharing that right now for everybody to go and check it out. All right. Thank you so much for joining us and hanging around today for today's conversation that we just had with Ericka Young. I can't wait to hear some of the nuggets that you took away from that conversation. Before you go, I want to invite you to join me for another conversation that's going to happen on March the 12th at 6:30 p.m., where I'm going to be talking about the 3 lies that women need to leave behind to be confident, authentic leaders. And in this conversation, we're going to challenge 3 common misconceptions that slow women down, trip us up, or stop us altogether from making progress on our leadership journey. And you can learn more about that conversation, which will be in the form of a webinar. And it's happening again on March 12th. And I would love for you to join me 6:30 p.m. Mountain Standard Time. You can find out all the details at 3lieswebinar.eventbrite.com. All right, y'all. Until next time, remember to work your plan and watch God work. Bye, y'all.